emotions cause illness. The emotions are causing people to be sick. People are stuck on trying to be happy, ending up sad. People are stuck on trying to be focused on happiness, end up miserable. That's why we live in a world where pharmaceutical meds are needed to try and blind and numb people rather than people living inspired. I have this saying that all progress starts by telling the truth. Now the truth is this, our brains are designed. I'm going to get a little geeked out and scientific here. If this is our brain, and this is what's called the amygdala. The amygdala lives here, and your midbrain or hippocampus lives here. Let's just call it midbrain for now, because it's simple, right? Amygdala, everyone knows. This is the emotional centers of your brain, okay? This is what controls whether you feel something good or bad inside of it. You perceive it in your amygdala. And this is what's called the animal side of your brain. The animal brain. Now, why do I call it the animal brain? That sounds so mean and so rude. And so let me explain why it's called the animal brain. It's not my terminology. It's science terminology, actually. That's what they call it. Right now, if I asked you, think about how you feel. Can you do it? How do you feel right now? You just had a response. Happy, sad, kind, hungry, all these things are metacognitive responses. That makes you human. That's the one thing that you can do as humans that others can't. Now, or animals can't. So an animal actually has this area called the amygdala. Every animal does. Actually, every mammal does. Let me rephrase that. We as humans are animals. So I love it when people say, we're not animals, we're people. Actually, we're animals. It's exactly what we are. We're mammals. And us as mammals are going through the same processes as every human or every other species. We pee, we poop, we birth, we sex, we, eat, we breathe. These are all natural animal characteristics. And we go through this evolutionary process, which I'm not going to get too heavy into, but our brain is constantly focused on growing and evolving. The more we stay in the animal brain, this is what I call in the world of the masses. Right? The world of the masses, and I say this with respect, not disrespect, is that they live in an emotional state, constantly angry, constantly battling, constantly fighting with emotions, and their body is berated by highs and lows of emotions. And so they constantly go and live in this state where their emotions go up or down, or up or down, up or down. They're either happy or sad, happy or sad. This is what they call, quote-unquote, bipolar at extreme levels. If not, most of us oscillate at different levels inside of it. The midbrain, that was your values. This filters your reality to get to this area here called the prefrontal cortex, or the executive center of the brain. When you're here, your brain is constantly working, and you have logic, strategy, foresight. So you can see ahead. You ever heard of the third eye before? Where does the third eye sit? Bam, right there. And what sits right there in the brain? The prefrontal cortex. So the prefrontal cortex is the neurologic space of what the yogis called the third eye. And when you get your third eye, what happens when your third eye opens? You get visions, you get clarity, you get inspiration, you get ideas, and you have foresight, right? Same thing. It's the same thing. Being an Indian guy who grew up in the world of yoga and enlightenment, well, enlightenment is not really true. It's not really enlightenment, it's just clarity and awakening. You get focus. And what they call downloads is really just clarity of vision, right? But enlightenment is not really it. Enlightenment actually happens when you have balance of the whole nervous system. But growing up in an Indian world, I kind of lived with this, and this is part of my life. And I learned about this, grew up with this, and I started studying neurology, and I was like, oh, these things intersect quite a bit, right? Insight, that's absolutely right. So when we have logic, strategy, and foresight, we live in our highest values. Because in your highest values, you'll be focused on the future, you'll be able to look with clarity with what you want, and you won't be emotionally distraught. But when you live in an emotional state, you're going to live in the animal brain, where you're reactive versus proactive. You're going to be reactive versus proactive. I'll give you an example. I have this thing where I'm going to be real. I'm just going to be who I am. If someone doesn't like it, okay, cool. I'm okay with that. But, I'm not attached to it. But without question, without fail, at some point, if I do a webinar or something like that, and I say somewhere in there, we'll get a phone call from into the office. His stuff is so great, and it's usually a woman. It's not guys who call me on this, but it's usually a woman that calls and says, his stuff is so great, I could learn so much, but I can't handle him swearing. That's emotion, not logic. Can you see that? That's emotion, not logic. It has nothing to do with the idea of what you could learn, and it's more so an emotional place. Now, if someone comes along and they're triggered by their past, they have a root experience like guilt or shame or emotions of resentment, are they thinking about money from their prefrontal cortex or their amygdala? The animal brain, 100%. If you're holding on to guilt, shame, resentment, pride, or infatuation, you're living in the animal brain. The amygdala, this is the part of the brain that's emotional, that can't see with clarity. And what happens when you can't see with clarity? Are you able to move forward, or do you stay stuck where you are? You stay stuck where you are. And then your outer world is a reflection of your inner world. Your outer world becomes a reflection of your inner world. So internally, if you're emotionally chaotic, living on the same hamster wheel again and again and again, and you see the same pictures again and again and again, you're stuck. However, when you balance it, you rewire it, and you move your brain along the path, and it moves forward, you think from here. And when you think from the prefrontal cortex, your brain is alive and awakened, and it's moving you forward towards something. Do you understand why we use the term stuck and unstuck? Animal brain thinking like an animal, and a human brain thinking of consciousness. Conscious homeostasis. Unconscious can't be homeostatic. When you think just emotionally, you can't be homeostatic. It's impossible. It's impossible. But you can have homeostatic processes when you're in the frontal part of the brain. Now, when your brain is stuck in this state, in this space here underneath, you'll be emotional and in the zone of desperation. Right here. It lives right in the amygdala and the animal brain. The zone of inspiration, my friends, lives here. This is the zone of inspiration. This is the zone of desperation here. This is important to understand before our next process. If you're predominantly living here in the zone of desperation, you're going to have hypervigilant, high blood pressure, increased heart rate, tense, anger, frustration, blackout, anxiety, depression, digestive disturbances, diarrhea, constipation, liver enzyme fatigue, CRP levels will be high, stenotic arteries, arthritic spines, arthritic knees will all be a part of that. All be components because you're living in the zone of desperation. Inability to move forward. That's all because people have been saying that you've got to live in this emotional state. You don't. Emotions cause illness. But the world is teaching people, got to go be happy. The happier you are, the better you'll be. That's true. Let's look at society. If that's true, then we'd have a whole different conversation. But that's not true at all. Emotions cause illness. And emotions are causing people to be sick. People are stuck on trying to be happy, ending up sad. People are stuck on trying to be focused on happiness, end up miserable. That's why we live in a world where pharmaceutical meds are needed to try and blind and numb people rather than people living inspired. And are you living in the emotional state? Are you living in the prefrontal state? Are you living in a state where you love to live your life or not to live your life? Because would you agree with me, and I make the statement, the more of the frontal brain we use, the more conscious we are. Because you're not reactive, right? Depending on the level of brain you actually use, it determines the level of conscious evolution you've actually had. Because the role of the human is to evolve their brain, to grow their brain, to expand it. Because when you grow your brain, you expand your awareness and consciousness. You're not reactive in that state. And when you rewire the brain, you help it, you evolve it so that it grows and moves, and you use more of the brain than less of the brain. Because the more of the brain you actually use, the more neurology you use, the more health you have, the more focus you have, the greater the energy, the greater the focus inside of it. That all allows you to actually live a life that's healthier, more energetic, more inspired. But here's the interesting thing. When your self-worth goes up, what follows it? Your net worth. When your self-worth goes up, your net worth goes up. The more of your brain you use, do you make more or less money? More. The more of your brain you use, the more money you make. Because you see more options, more alternatives, more solutions to problems. The less of it you use, the less money you make. So many of you are saying, how do I grow my income? This is how you do it. You use more of your brain. I don't care how many strategies you want. Investing, you can invest all you want to. But if you don't heal the root experiences and rewire them and move up the ladder of the brain, which is the brain is trying to do, then you stay stuck in the same frequency, same neural pattern, same chaos you constantly do. Hey guys, if you like that video, click on the link over here and you're going to love the next video.